Well, damn. Zombeavers. Um, I remember seeing the trailer for this, and I thought it looked stupid but funny. And we picked it up actually like when it came out. I remember buying this like the week that it came out, which was quite a while ago. I'm so glad that I finally got around to watching it because this movie is ridiculous. Oh gosh, where do I even start? I don't know. It's in a lot of ways it's like a parody of horror movies and an homage to horror movies and just a plain B horror movie all wrapped up into one. I mean, I don't know what I expected, and it even says right in the front cover, from the guys that brought you American Pie, Cabin Fever, and The Ring. And that should pretty much tell you everything that you need to know about it. But you should also remember the guy who wrote this movie is the guy who wrote for The Man Show while it was on. Um, it it doesn't take itself seriously, um, but it in some ways plays it straight. I don't know that I'm explaining that very well. I guess the best way I can think to put it is like the actors that are in it. They play it with just the right amount, with just the right mixture of B horror movie, cheesy acting, and playing it straight. Playing it realistic, I guess is a better way to put it. Not necessarily playing it straight, but playing more realistic. And it's just that perfect blend to where it's not bad, but it also isn't bad on purpose. And you're not watching it, you don't watch it and you're like, you're obviously, nobody's going to get nominated for their acting in this movie. Nobody did. But nobody's going to look back on it and be like, man, those guys just did an amazing job in that movie. Because that's just not what it's about. But it's also not so bad that it pulls people out of the movie. You stick with it. It keeps you engrossed, keeps you laughing. The humor is the most lowbrow that you can imagine. The name of the movie is Zombeavers. And, it's because it's about beavers that come back to life as zombies. But boy, they just used it. I swear they probably used the word beavers at least 100 times in this movie. And they really play up the jokes about beavers. Because, obviously it's about a group of 6 teenagers that are in a cabin out by a lake. Trying to have sex, trying to have relationships, things like that. They really play up the beaver jokes. But they don't get old because it's so obvious. It's such an obvious joke, and it's so obvious they're doing it on purpose. They're purposely using the joke over and over and over, but it doesn't get stale somehow. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know. It should have stopped being funny, but it wasn't. There's a great line in the very beginning where they meet this guy that's a hunter, and they had been out in the lake, the 3 girls, and they were swimming over to look at the beaver dam. And this hunter comes out of the woods, and they're like, "Oh, we were just looking for beavers." And he just looks at these 3 girls in their bikini and says, "Well, aren't we all?" And after that line, I'm like, okay, so this is what kind of movie I'm getting into. Okay, well, at least I'm prepared for it now. There was, there's some obvious B teenage horror movie tropes that they throw in, but again, it's almost a parody and an homage at the same time, so it makes sense that they throw those in. they throw in tropes, but the cliches don't necessarily stick. You know, there's the couple that is just obsessed with having sex. There's a couple that's trying to take themselves more seriously. There's the couple that broke up. There's, you know, because one of them cheated, and, you know, trying to figure out who he cheated on her with, and all this stuff, and blah 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 and blah blah blah. But at the same time, they don't really stick to a lot of the horror movie cliches. In that there's an interesting dynamic that happens with the characters throughout this movie, and that the longer the movie goes on, the more you hate the characters. Almost all of them. They're thoroughly, in the beginning, they're fine. But the more the movie progresses, you realize just how thoroughly unlikable these people are. I mean, they're just terrible as characters. And I know that it was done that way on purpose. And the one person who survives is the one that you would not expect to survive at the end. You know, it kind of pulled a cabin in the woods thing on us there, and that it takes some stock cliches but twists them around and turns them on their head. You know, you know, all the main characters are there. There's the slutty girl. There's the athletic guy. There's the weird, you know, there's like the fool, the jester type, Joker type guy. There's the nerdy girl and all this stuff. All the characters are there, but you don't like any of them. Even in the beginning of the movie, I mean, you kind of, even as you're getting introduced to the characters, the nerdy girl, the first introduction is she's crying in a bathroom because, you know, she just found out that her boyfriend cheated on her. You know, but even then you don't feel a lot of sympathy for the character. You don't feel sympathy for any of the characters, really, throughout this movie. You don't necessarily like any of them. And in that way, it makes them seem like more normal people than anything. You know, you get a group like, you know, you get just a random grouping of 6, you know, college-age kids. I said teenagers, they weren't. They're supposed to all be in college. You get a random grouping of 6 college-age kids. Most likely, they're going to be assholes. You're not going to like them. You know, and so in that way, it was somewhat realistic. But the characters were written to be kind of over the top in a lot of ways, exaggerated versions of these type of character cliches. You know, the jock is wanting to be the hero all the time, blah blah blah, and walking around and making jokes and trying to be tough guy and stuff like that. But it works for what it's doing because, again, this is more than anything, it's a parody. You know, and it's hilarious. I love the fact that all the creature effects were done realistically. They were done with models and prosthetics. They weren't CGI. In that way, it was so super cheesy, but I loved it. It was very 80s B horror in that way. Because, you know, it used to be that B horror was all model effects and things like that, but they were unpolished versions. Now, most B horror movies are CGI, but it's unpolished and cheap version. I like that they went back to the model and the practical effects for everything. It was great. It was so awesome to see, and it was surprisingly well done. I mean, it was made to look cheap because, again, this is a B horror movie homage, you know, and parody. So it was made to not look completely polished. But yeah, this movie it was great. This is a movie that I will watch again and again. It's one of those ones that I can see myself just popping in and just kind of having going in the background. You know, it's funny. There's good jokes in it. One of the funniest parts of this whole movie is the very beginning and the very end of the movie. Literally the very beginning and the very end. There's these 2 guys who are basically truck drivers in kind of a way. You know, they're delivery drivers. And played by Bill Burr and John Mayer, of all people. John Mayer in disguise. I didn't even know it was him. I had to look it up on IMDb. Um, and they're driving a truck with some sort of container of some sort of chemical that spills in the lake, which causes this whole thing. And they are just hilarious. Such a short little scene that they're in. It's like less than 5 minutes in the beginning, and then just like 1 minute at the end. But it's the funniest part of the whole movie. But yeah, I highly recommend this movie, and I recommend that you buy it because the special features are hilarious on this. I've already watched a lot of them. There's something in the special features that's called For Your Consideration, and it is actually a specific trailer that they made and sent to TIFF, which is the Toronto International Film Festival, to try to get their movie as a selection to be screened. And they shot the trailer with this very serious voiceover. They didn't use any of the outlandish scenes. They made it seem like a very dark indie horror movie, and it is hilarious to watch that, especially after you've seen the movie. I recommend waiting to watch that special feature till after you've already seen the movie, and you can see what they did. They're pulling like small individual scenes completely out of context to try to make the movie seem like something that it isn't. And it was just hilarious. But yes, I recommend buying it. You can pick this up for cheap. I mean, you can pick this up on Blu-ray for probably like $8 at most. Probably find it in the $7.99 bin at your local Best Buy. Pick it up. It's a funny movie. It's a good movie. It is exactly what you expect. Lowbrow humor, boobs, and zombeavers. Check it out.